Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest Manufacturing Management Live panel. My name is Chris Beck. I'm the editor of Manufacturing Management. Today's panel is being sponsored by energy consultancy Inenco. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the key topics facing manufacturers and indeed all businesses and society as a whole, that of sustainability. The pandemic has disrupted life as we previously knew it for the best part of a year now, but it's also presented many companies with the opportunity to rethink the way they do things, including becoming more sustainable. Now, the trend towards sustainability, of course, has been around way before the pandemic. Government targets for a net zero economy have been introduced, including things like a ban on sales of petrol and diesel cars and a move towards more renewable energy. Reassuringly, though, the appetite doesn't seem to be dissipating, the appetite to become more green. Recent research that we've conducted with Inenco found that almost 95% of manufacturing leaders say that sustainability is either important or very important to their operations, with 98% saying it's grown in importance over the last 12 months or so. However, many are concerned about funding green projects, especially in the current economic climate. Interestingly, sustainability is also changing buying behaviour. Some research from Deloitte recently showed that 43% of consumers are already actively choosing brands based on their environmental value. And with Glasgow set to host the UN's COP26 conference in November 2021, promises to be the year the green revolution really takes shape. To discuss how manufacturers can maximise these green opportunities as we recover from the pandemic, I'm pleased to be joined by three experts. First up, we have Daisy Lavington, Sustainability Lead for Oxfordshire manufacturer Essentra Components, Bridget Amoruso and her cat, who is a Climate Change, Energy and Environment Lead at Make UK, the manufacturers organisation, and Dan Hume, Manufacturing Consultant at our sponsor, Inenco. And thank you everyone for being here today. Dan, if we start with you, how have you at Inenco seen your customers' demands and energy requirements change since the start of the pandemic, a year or so ago?
Yeah, okay. So I think, to be honest, sustainability has been at the forefront of certainly our manufacturing clients pre-pandemic. We saw a groundswell at the end of 2019, as we phrase it, where the end user of the product has been putting more and more pressure on the retailer of the product, and that has then flown up the supply chain and ended up landing on the manufacturer's desk to deal with. Obviously, I would say the pandemic or the start of COVID-19 and the first lockdown put a halt on any progress that many businesses had made, just because their focus was turned on, can they open, can they continue to run? Do they have to adapt and actually start manufacturing to support the pandemic and the country's way of dealing with it? But since the end of the first lockdown, there's then that momentum's gathered, and I'd say it's even larger than it was before. And that's now because businesses have recognised, whilst humans aren't interfering with the environment, you can see that the air pollution's reduced. There's a lot less litter, things like that. But also businesses are using it now as an opportunity to reduce their impact on the environment and build back better, to coin the phrase that everyone seems to be using.
Absolutely, yeah. Bridget, is this something that you've seen amongst your Make UK members?
Well, yes, I can echo all the points, absolutely. We also surveyed our members at the beginning of last year, and most of them were, of course, aware of net zero, but not many, and many were actually pretty ready, over half, to commit to it, but they hadn't really, many more hadn't taken action yet. And as indeed it's been put on hold because of the priorities on, COVID and Brexit. Yes, there is a lot of eagerness to get going, and finance is one of the things that are holding it back, as well as skills, but we can talk about that later.
Absolutely, yeah. Daisy, obviously as a manufacturer, how have you seen your sustainability priorities change, I suppose, and are there any major projects that you've undertaken in the last 12 months or so?
Yeah, so I would say there's definitely still a really keen appetite for sustainability in my organisation. From the wider sustainability professionals' perspective, there was worry at the beginning of the pandemic that the attention on sustainability and climate change that had been built during 2019 through, Extinction Rebellion and lots of big pieces in the media would be diminished due to the pandemic. But actually, I think it's had the opposite effect. And because the pandemic is kind of a serious global complex risk, the same as climate change is also a serious global and complex risk, it's actually brought more attention to the climate change agenda, and businesses want to protect themselves against potential other future disasters which could be linked to climate change. So there's really an appetite from our investors and our senior management to put plans in place to mitigate those risks. The main project that I've been working on for Essential Components in the last year and throughout the pandemic is the development of a sustainable product offer for our customers. More and more our customers' needs are changing, and they want to see us offering products which are as sustainable as possible from lots of different aspects, like the embodied carbon of the product, but also the waste and the recommended disposal of the product as well.
Dan, is that similar to some of the projects and schemes that you've seen manufacturers undertaking?
Yeah, a lot of the communication and support that we've been giving to our manufacturing clients has been focused around energy and carbon as part of their sustainability initiatives. But certainly when we've had boardroom discussions, there's been a severe focus on the products, waste management, single-use plastics, but also then air pollution and job sustainability and the sustainability of the business continuing. Sustainability is such a vague phrase that it can be misconstrued or read in so many different ways. So it's important to nail down what sustainability means for each organisation.
I think that's a very good point, Bridget.
I just want to add that we can see as well across the different sectors or subsectors of manufacturing quite big differences. So some sectors have obviously done very well and others a lot less well. So some are really rearing and ready to go or have already started, and some others are really struggling. Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. And Bridget, you mentioned that obviously with everything that's been going on, both the pandemic and kind of bigger, longer reaching challenges such as Brexit going on, occupying a lot of manufacturers' time and energies. Do you think that that's the right approach, or should sustainability be front and center of everything that manufacturers think of?
Well, I think the Brexit impact will tailor off pretty quickly anyway, and we can see that manufacturers overall are just, they just want to get over it and, get it done and over. The COVID impacts are a little bit more worrying. The recovery will be a lot longer than we think, perhaps several years actually. So it is a concern, and the issue is about debt that has been accrued during this year, and particularly hitting smaller, the SMEs in particular. So and also resources due to the new burdens for administrative burdens due to Brexit as well. That will become the norm. But yes, the green industrial revolution or net zero sustainability, whatever you call it, is actually seen to be a major opportunity for the sector, and it is the way to make things more resilient and to build back. But what we have to be careful is to make sure that the short-term actions are actually tie into the longer-term needs for this program and this agenda.
Yeah, just to jump in there, I think a lot of the time, certainly from speaking to some of our customers and other customers in the marketplace, in the manufacturing sector, most businesses focus on 2, 3, 4 or 5 year financial plans, and that's how they build their strategies. But sustainability is a 20, 30, 40, 50 year program that you need to commit to. And some of the things I guess that we've struggled with, and therefore that our customers have struggled with, is getting that engagement to think longer term. You know, if a financial director of a company says, I don't want to invest £1 million in becoming net zero because in the next 3 years I intend on selling my business and that's not my specific strategy, then that financial director or that board are almost ignoring the sustainability issue and delaying it onto somebody else's responsibility. But you just have to look at a couple of organisations, certainly in the media at the moment, like Brewdog, who are making massive noise. And from the outside looking in, we don't work with Brewdog, but from the outside looking in, I would say that the main driver for them to be more sustainable is around their CEO wanting to do the best thing, and he's seeking to raise a lot of investment in the marketplace, and certainly around environmental social governance. Businesses aren't being able to raise investment from investors unless they've got a clear sustainability program in place.
Yeah, Daisy, how important is that for Essentra components to have that that kind of corporate responsibility to being sustainable?
Yeah, really, really important. Like Dan said, it's really important to our investors. So we aim to be really transparent and complete EcoVadis and CDP voluntary disclosures. So, and increasingly we're seeing more and more customers request to see these scorecards as part of the supplier selection process across the whole of the Essentra PLC group. I would say on the kind of changing priorities within the sustainability agenda, we have to remember there are 3 pillars to sustainability, not only environment, but people, planet and profit. And there's short-term and long-term aspects to each of those 3 elements. And clearly during the pandemic, the priority for Essentra has been looking after our people, and really in the short term, putting a lot of energy into, you know, safety in the factory, supplying employees with PPE, implementing one-way systems, changing working practices to make sure it's only one employee working on a certain task so they don't have to be in close proximity and things like that. And in terms of finances, obviously there are sustainability opportunities, like we've been working with Inenco at our UK factory, and they've helped us to save money on the climate change levy tax by working with us to improve our progress on our ISO 14001 targets. So it shows that by improving efficiency in the factory, reducing the energy required per kind of kilo of production, we can gain environmental and financial benefits. So we don't always have to think of sustainability as a cost financially. There are a lot of financial opportunities as well.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. The kind of financial benefits to sustainability. A lot of Daisy, like you were saying, a lot of business leaders will see becoming more green as a cost, albeit for good reasons, but especially at the moment when times are tight, you know, they don't want to be opening their purse strings and spending money on things for the sake of it. Dan, what would you say to that about, you know, being about sustainability being a kind of wealth creator and a profit driver, I suppose?
Yeah, sustainability is not free. It does include a lot of investment, but also engagement. So it's not free on time or effort either. The way we try and approach it with our clients, and I don't think it's any trade secret here, is that we try and implement a sustainability strategy or a decarbonisation strategy within our customers that focuses around utilities and any fuel sources and then carbon, but trying to make that project self-funding. So our aim, for example, could be to reduce their carbon footprint by a certain percentage, but in doing so, we're reducing their energy cost, which is saving them money. And that money can then be reinvested to new initiatives as part of the longer, you know, self-revolving, self-funding, refer to it as a bit of an infinity loop, that it's going to pay for itself.
Yeah, if I may add, I think that's really important, and it is the education and awareness piece, as you say, and you almost have to go back to basics. well, we know that 70% or more of our manufacturing sector is composed of SMEs, and the majority, vast majority, tell us they don't know where to start for one, and they also don't put the different pieces of the puzzle together. So as you said, they don't realize that energy efficiency measures are actually part of the path to net zero. And they tend to focus on costs, but so this is very important to educate them and raise that awareness that it is not necessarily going to cost. It will cost in time, investment, but it can be and in the end, we also saw very strongly that those during even the short time that we had, well, the 1 year that we had the pandemic now, that those who had already built sustainability into their plans, they were a lot more resilient, and they did a lot better. So it's already can be demonstrated, the benefits, financial benefits.
It's good business as well, making sure that you're running as efficient as possible. Certainly in manufacturing, where energy and carbon are concerned, energy is probably within the top 10 of most manufacturers' costs, if not the top 5 in some of the more energy intensive. So if you can manage and look after those costs as best possible, not only are you reducing your cost of production, but you're also making yourself a bit more robust to uncertain times like we've seen.
Absolutely, yeah. Something that Bridget mentioned earlier on was the kind of skills debate, I suppose. And the research that we did with Inenco showed that more and more CEOs and board level individuals are getting involved in making sustainability decisions and taking up some of the slack that other departments in the business will have had when it comes to sustainability. How important, Dan, do you think that is, that the people right at the very top of manufacturing sites, and I guess all businesses, have a say in the sustainability plan and sustainability approach of their business?
It's massive. It's probably one of the most important things. Daisy will probably back me on this, but without the board buy-in, the project's not going to get going. You can have a lot of people within the organisation that are lower down the ranks, let's say, and they could be really passionate about doing the right thing, and they want to work for a company that's taking that responsibility to reduce their impact on the environment. But without the backing of the person that holds the money and the person who writes the policies and the person who makes the ultimate decisions and drives the company, it's falling flat before it's even started the race, unfortunately. So it's so important to get the board on board before you start trying to make any movements. And I think Daisy will back me up on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've established a board sustainability committee for the Essentia group in 2019. And since then, we've really seen an acceleration with the board kind of filtering down to the executive committee, the CEO and the managing directors of the different businesses, including the components business. And also our group operations director has been fundamental in our sustainability programme and really helping to gain the buy-in of other senior managers around the business and showing the importance of this topic. And our chief financial officer is also very interested because she gets asked lots of questions from investors. So she wants to know as much as possible about the sustainability projects so she can be armed when she's going into being questioned by investors. So absolutely echo everything Dan said. Senior management buy-in is absolutely key.
Sure.
There are studies which show that only 4% of board members have any sustainability credentials, and that's part of the problem as well. So we're, also suggesting that there should be, some funding, government funding to provide support to companies with training up or, on sustainability, setting up higher top management in that area.
Yeah, it's an interesting number, that, Bridget. And I think one thing, not to argue with you, but maybe just to counter, is that whilst they may not have the education or the credentials, the main focus that they want is that they're actually on board with it and that they're going to drive that change. Once they recognise that need to change, or that opportunity in some cases to actually make themselves more competitive, they can then seek that support, whether it be external or, like you say, through government funded education.
Absolutely. One way that we've managed to achieve our board sustainability committee being so on board, as Dan said, with this topic, is through external kind of speakers coming in to speak to our board. So CEOs of other companies who have already been on a sustainability journey, sharing their experience and the benefits to show our board the importance of this topic. And even though they might not have the, a master's in sustainability or sustainability qualifications, it's really their belief in the topic and their passion for it that drives us forward.
Yeah, I agree with you that I think more and more the values will drive it than maybe cost or knowledge, technical knowledge, if you want.
Do you see, Bridget, do you see an appetite for change at a senior level? If only 4% of board members have any sustainability background, do you see, the remaining 96 wanting to learn and wanting to become more aware of how to become more sustainable?
I think yes, but it's also a question of capacity in terms of resources. So at the moment, many don't have the time, but there are, we do have champions, and there are many SMEs who are doing amazing things. And as you said, Daisy, we're also organizing programs so that they can be showcased and also engage with others who want to start on that journey or who don't know anything about it and have questions. So, yes.
Could I mention just skills at a kind of level below the board? So skills in the main kind of workforce is definitely still a challenge. There's definitely a shortage of those skills unless you go on a big hiring spree and add loads of environmental professionals to your organisation. So I can imagine lots of SMEs are probably in this position where they don't have a specialist environmental or sustainability professional in their organisation, and so they think, I don't know where to start. But I would say, even for me, who is educated in this topic, I just listen to so many webinars, and it brings me so much knowledge about topics that I don't know that much about. So I would say there's so many free resources out there, like this panel discussion, I suppose. But also, if you do have an internal sustainability professional like myself, my role is really about kind of educating others within the business. It's not just about me doing all of the activities myself. It's kind of, I train the sales teams so that they know how to have conversations about sustainability with their customers, for example. So it doesn't only have to be me having sustainability conversations.
Absolutely. Dan, what role does Inenco play in this kind of training discussion at senior level and, as Daisy was just saying there, the next level down?
Yeah. I think it was Bridget that mentioned it, but Bridget mentioned that a lot of businesses don't know where to start with it. And one of the things that we found really supportive is running a workshop, basically, or a whiteboarding session, however you want to phrase it. And essentially what we do is we get a number of different people from within the organisation together. We start to understand their sensitivity to environmental change, understand what their customers are saying, what pressures they may have from the board to improve, whether there is an interest from the board to improve sustainably. And we start to kind of basically draft out all the ideas of why they should do it, why it's good for their business. And that then forms the business case, but also it starts to form the starting points of that journey. So where are we now is one of the most important things. You can't progress if you don't know where you're starting from. So that exercise allows you to understand where you are now, start to piece together where you think you want to be and by when. And then we support our customers in that journey. So we define the end goals. and then work with them to develop a strategy to put in place to achieve that within the timescale that they set or they want to achieve it within. And obviously budget comes in as a massive part of this. And throughout that strategy, it's our job to try and identify ways in which it can be self-funded, or if there are any external funding opportunities as well.
Yeah, what we also find is, or we hear a lot, is that SMEs get almost, daily phone calls, or they used to, probably still do, with companies offering them to do a carbon footprint for them and so on, and they actually are lost. They don't know, which one is trustworthy, which one to pick, and so on. So that's also an issue, is about having trustworthy sources of information, and maybe an accreditation scheme from by the government could help as well. List of accredited partners or consultancies that would help as well. And in terms of hiring as well, what we see right now, and it's probably exacerbated by Brexit and the fact that the immigration regime is a lot less flexible, or has changed, is that even companies who are desperate to hire can't actually find the people they need. And so we know there's already a systemic lack of apprentices and engineers, young engineers. That's already been, many years. And with this crisis, it's just so exacerbated. It's going to be a massive issue. So the skills gap has to be filled somehow. So we obviously talking to the government, providing inputs that this is really urgent and critical to the success of the whole transition to a low carbon economy.
Absolutely, yeah. Do you think the government support, Bridget, you just talked about trustworthy and open sources of information and sources of advice and accreditation. Do you think the government, obviously it's been doing a lot in recent months around sustainability and building back post-pandemic in a more sustainable way, and obviously, like I mentioned at the start, Glasgow's hosting the COP climate change conference towards the end of the year. But do you think government needs to be more open about the support that's out there, some of the incentives, and kind of get that message out to especially SMEs who, like we've all said, are the ones who maybe get overwhelmed by sustainability as a concept?
I think the government has really changed tone in the last 4 or 5 months, probably since the the Climate Change Committee's recommendations, and they've really upped their game. And I think politically there seems to be consensus across the board that net zero is a priority, and they really have, as we know, issued all these new policies, or revised policies, or strategies, I should say, which I think creates a good political environment for the moment. But what companies need then is to see the policies that accompany them and what it actually means in practice for them. And also that these policies are, as someone mentioned here already, long-term, sufficiently long-term that creates a good environment for investment confidence. And so I think that the government is open in terms of funding and access to fund, which is of course key as well. There are quite a lot of things already. I mean, there are things that are some initiatives don't cover necessarily everything that manufacturers need. For example, old legacy equipment, which they may have 100-year-old press that needs changing, and that costs £2 million and or more, whatever, and they there's not really anything existing at the moment to fund that. So we're in discussion with the base on the industrial energy transformation fund to make it more flexible and accessible. But overall, in terms of the funding landscape, it's also very complicated. And so, you know, to find your way and to know which initiatives exactly are available is quite difficult. That's also an issue. Again, access to information and
yeah,
so
absolutely.
they're asking to make it simple, more simple and more readily accessible, perhaps more flexible as well.
This is probably a good point actually to ask our first question, which we've had from one of our followers on social media in the run up to this panel, and it's around exactly that. Dan and Daisy, I don't know if you want to tackle this one between you to start with. This person works for a medium-sized manufacturer, and sustainability plays a part in their role. And the main thing that they struggle with is getting funding for projects. So they ask, how can they overcome this? And are there any ways that they can self-fund sustainability projects? Dan, if I come to you first, and then maybe Daisy and Bridget, we can come to you in a minute.
Yeah, as Bridget just highlighted, funds like the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund are only really directed at large-scale projects that are going to be quite innovative in reducing carbon footprint, but cut a big chunk of carbon footprint out. They're not really designed at small-scale opportunities, let's say. And I can understand why the government focus on those big-scale ones, because you want to make the biggest dent you can in the shortest amount of time, and hopefully then develop some repeatable solutions that you can scale down. But for an organisation that's struggling to fund itself, I think we've kind of covered a little earlier in our conversation that you really need to try and start focusing on what you can do internally and use sustainability to fund itself through energy reduction, for example, if you can save cost or avoid paying taxes like CCL and the EII rebates, so renewable obligation, feed-in tariff and contract for difference. If you're able to claim relief of that gives you some massive cost avoidance, that rather than just seeing it as a saving off your bottom line, you've created a pot of money that can hopefully fund future projects.
Yeah, Daisy, are there any projects that you guys have done that would answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say looking at all different types of projects and identifying all of the opportunities, and then kind of ordering them in terms of what's free, what just requires a small amount of investment, and then what are your kind of bigger investment opportunities, and then you can go after them depending on how much you have to spend. So for example, internally in Kidlington, we've recently transitioned the site over to being zero waste to landfill. And that was actually a savings opportunity, because obviously the landfill tax is quite significant now. So actually increasing the amount that we were recycling, for example, you can actually make money from your recycling rather than having to pay someone to take it away. Or for example, there would be small opportunities like insulating machines, which would only require a couple of £100 per machine and have a very quick payback period. And then a larger scale project, which Bridget mentioned earlier, like replacing legacy equipment and kind of older machines. We've calculated that we'd have about a 30% energy saving if we changed our machines from being hydraulic to electric. However, obviously that's millions of pounds worth of investment. So that's very much a long-term project, which is kind of going through financial approval and discussions at the moment. But I would say there are lots of different opportunities, not only big expensive projects. If you look closely, there are kind of quick wins as well.
Yeah, the classic low-hanging fruit, I suppose. Yeah, Bridget, is there anything you'd like to add to that? Oh, you're on mute, I'm afraid.
Sorry, I would just say that yes, from discussion with the base, they are open to these. It's just because they don't know what the issues are. So feeding them back to them, and they can tweak their schemes, and so hopefully it will get better with time as well. But Dan, you mentioned also innovation. So clearly funding innovation and R&D is going to be very important. That's obviously, but also monitoring and digitalization. So there are still many companies who do, all of them have smart meters, but not necessarily, 30-minute monitoring. So that also is very key. It's the basics really, and how to measure. So I think there's also a message that we need to push, is that digitalization and green tech and the net zero agenda, sustainability, all go hand in hand, and they're not two separate things either.
Yeah, if you look at the government energy white paper that was issued in December, I think now, the three main areas, or the two main areas that are relevant to this discussion, are transforming energy and then supporting a green recovery. And within those, the bullet points that I picked out under transforming energy were around building world-leading digital infrastructure. I'm reading this now, so I'm not memory here, for the energy system. So that kind of adds to the point you just made there, Bridget. But then in the supporting a green recovery from COVID-19, they're putting up £1 billion of investment between now and 2025 to facilitate the deployment of carbon capture and utilisation in 2 different industrial clusters. And that'll be going ahead between now and 2025. So there is some massive investment there. And they calculate that that will remove 10 million tonnes of CO2 by 2030 by investing that £1 billion. But like you say, that's large scale investment for large scale projects. But as a strategy, why wouldn't you want to take big chunks out as soon as you can and then worry about all the little chunks after?
Well, they also say, yeah, sorry. They also say that process efficiency is also the first thing that can be done, in the first 5 years.
Yeah, if you look at it from a,
yeah. So yeah.
If you look at it from a common sense point of view, there's no point in you buying a new machine, or even there's no point in putting LED lights in a warehouse area of your factory if you can't turn them off. So if the education and the awareness or the process isn't in place, there's no point in just making savings through investment. It starts from understanding data, then making sure that the processes are correct, and then start looking at the investment side of things.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something that we haven't really touched on until just now. The small changes that everyone can make. Turning lights off. If you're keeping your lights on all the time, then it doesn't really matter what bulbs you have, because you're going to be using energy unnecessarily. Dan, you said that the first step is to cut your energy use. That's the easiest way of saving money and saving energy. It stands to reason. So there's obviously more that companies can do. Look internally, look at the processes that they've currently got, and kind of streamline those, like any kind of lean activity. Really, cutting waste is something that manufacturers are very, very good at. So this should be no different, I suppose.
Yeah, things like leaks as well, and detecting leaks, which apparently air leaks from compressors and hoses are one of the major sources of waste, energy waste. Yeah. So
basic
people are not are not wired to actually look out for them. Yeah.
So that's obviously a whole new discussion that we can have when we've got even more time. Just one final question that we had from our social media followers. It's a kind of a general discussion topic, really. Obviously, we've talked a lot about carbon neutrality and all the good things that come from that. But this question takes a little bit further. And they ask, I've seen a lot of businesses becoming carbon neutral, while some even become carbon negative. My question to the panel is this: is becoming carbon neutral enough, or should manufacturers be looking at going towards carbon negativity? I'll let Dan, you can start with that one.
Right, thanks for that. I think that the main driver needs to be, why are you doing it? So, for example, if you want to be carbon neutral, why? Is it a financial gain? Is it going to mean that you secure customers or win new business because the customers that you're trying to win are demanding that your business has a policy in place or that you're net zero? Is it a performance thing? So do you want to minimize your cost and be as efficient as possible? Or is it just simply down to image and how your company is perceived, or whether that's from your employees or from the board down? So it's quite a hard question to answer from my perspective, I'd say, because without understanding exactly what you're trying to achieve, there's no better or worse. Obviously, environmentalists would say, yeah, be carbon negative rather than carbon neutral, because then you're actually not only reducing your impact, but you're actually saving someone else the effort. You're over contributing, but I wouldn't like to say it's not necessary for manufacturers to be carbon negative, because absolutely, if you can achieve that, then great. And if the business has got the funding and you've got the buy-in to do so, then why wouldn't you? But I think the main key focus for a lot of companies is just understand why you're trying to achieve that and how important is it that you do it. And that should spell out literally then your plan as to whether you want to be carbon neutral, by when, or whether you want to actually go above and beyond.
Absolutely. Daisy, is there anything? Oh, sorry, Bridget, you
No.
you go first.
Please, Daisy.
Okay.
I would say the same as Dan. From a purely environmental point of view, of course, I'd like to be carbon negative if that was possible. But to be honest, we've got a long road to go to achieve carbon neutrality first. So we should prioritize that. And from kind of an alternative perspective of, is carbon neutral enough, full stop, not only thinking about carbon negativity, but the energy and waste kind of traditional sustainability topics are, of course, like the best place to start. But I don't think those two topics are enough anymore. Of course, everyone should be trying to reduce their energy consumption and reduce their waste, send zero waste to landfill as a responsible business. And that's almost like that's the bare minimum now considered, I would say. And especially at Essential Components, we're choosing to go above and beyond those two topics and focus on our product development into more sustainable products, because there's no use kind of reducing our energy impact if we're still relying on virgin plastics. Those two activities contradict each other. So I would say we do need to think beyond the carbon neutral topic.
I just want to say, let's start first things first. And I think that there is a standard, the PS 2060, which, tells you how to go about your net zero pathway. I'm not a technical person, so Dan, you'll know a lot more about it. But, it first starts by saying first you must remove or reduce your emissions. And then those that you cannot, you offset them. So, first things first. And then as you go through the process, you may have iterations where you find out that you can, those you thought you couldn't offset or remove, you can now, and so on. So, and, before talking about carbon negativity, let's already start by removing what we can remove. And we have also to be clear that some sectors like metal, steels, will not be, or it will be a lot more difficult for them to remove their emissions completely. And so, yeah, they might only be able to offset, but then technology might evolve as well more quickly than we think. And eventually they may be able to, with the right support from government and the right policies as well in terms of carbon pricing, things like we were talking about policies previously, and what's missing, for example, is, carbon content, standards, carbon border adjustments, and carbon pricing as well, which has to be set for the long term. Yeah. So, yes.
I think just for bragging rights purposes, it's worth mentioning that we went through the journey ourselves as an organisation. we felt about 12 months ago that we couldn't stand on our orange box and guide companies through to becoming net zero if we weren't doing it ourselves. And a key part of going through that journey ourselves made us understand possibly some of the pain that our customers are going to feel in going through that process. And, you know, despite us being an energy consultancy, we still had to get board engagement. We still had to find additional funding, and we still had to reduce, you know, our carbon impact on the environment, albeit we are a tiny drop in the ocean compared to a cement plant that's grinding up coal and burning that for heat as part of the process. But you know, we felt it was important to go through the exercise ourselves, one, to be net zero, but two, to better understand the journey our customers are going to have to go on. And that started with an understanding of where we were. So we were captured by ESOS, Energy Saving Opportunity Scheme. We audited our business to understand what our carbon footprint was and where the energy saving opportunities were and carbon saving opportunities. We reduced what we could. We changed some policies about our company cars and our fleet and transport. We did education with our staff. We went for ISO 14001. And then once we'd reduced what we could reduce, and we were still left with some, the inevitable, we went to a credible carbon offsetting partner and purchased carbon credits in order to achieve that. And as far as I'm aware, we're the only consultancy in the UK that's done that. We felt it was important that, you know, taking our customers on the journey, we had to be there ourselves.
Absolutely. I mean, that goes to show you, you do practice what you preach. It's all well and good telling manufacturers to be more sustainable, but the fact you've gone through it yourselves, like you say, you now understand the challenges that manufacturers will be facing. If anyone watching this, Dan, is keen to get in touch or get a bit of support from Inenco when it comes to anything to do with their sustainability or their energy management, what's the best way to get in touch?
Could email me directly at daniel.hume@inenco.com. Alternatively, I think we can use ask us a question at inenco.com, and we'll direct your question to the right department or the right person within the organisation to support your question.
Brilliant. Right. Well, I think we've probably reached the end of our allotted time. Unfortunately, this is a conversation that is going to dominate everything as we recover from the pandemic and try to build back better is the phrase that keeps being bandied around. Well, thank you to Dan, Daisy and Bridget for your time. Thank you to everyone for watching, and thank you to Inenco for sponsoring the panel. I hope to see you again on one very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.